As we get wound tighter and tighter into the web of uncertainty that accompanies this pandemic, more and more people are turning inward to find answers, to find clarity, to find firmer ground. Thus enters yoga, the primary purpose of which is to cultivate the skillful means to create vitality, to improve attitude, to manage life's stresses. In this session, we explore yoga's fundamental assertion, followed by a mindfulness practice to meet and manage fear. Hi, I'm Steve from Steve White Yoga, bringing you the application of yoga to manage your health, take control of your life, and improve your relationships. Here's today's session. So, welcome. Thank you for showing up for this. We're doing this twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the very same time, 4:30. And I saw some names on the list of people that signed up today that I don't think I've seen for this session, although I know many of the names. So thank you for giving this a try. It's the boring part of yoga. It's the part of yoga that comes from the furthest reaches of the past. And what we'll do in this half-hour session is just talk a little bit, hopefully for no more than 10 minutes or so today, and then do some guided meditation practice. So I'm going to start off actually with a story today, if that's okay. And this is an old story. It's not a really old story, but it's a 40 or 50-year-old story, I think. Some of you may have heard it before. I've heard it on a couple of different occasions, all related to meditation practice and yoga. It starts with Mohini, a regal white tiger, who for many years lived in the Washington National Zoo. And for most of those years, her home was in the old lion house. This was before they renovated, apparently, in a typical kind of 12 by 12 foot cat, big cat cage with iron bars, cement floor, the whole works. So Mohini, spent her days pacing restlessly back and forth in her cramped quarters until eventually biologists and staff worked together to create a natural habitat. So covering several acres, this new abode had woods, hills, trees, that's woods, a pond, and a lot of vegetation. So with great eagerness when the day arrived, they released Mohini into her new and expansive environment. So the tiger's first response was to seek refuge in the furthest corner of the compound, where she lived for the remainder of her life. And during her waking and active hours, paced back and forth in that corner, creating a 12 by 12 foot track in the dirt and the grass or whatever, and that's the story. And what does Mohini have to do with us? Well, we're not related, we know that, but on a very base level, we have the same features as Mohini, which is that we're creatures of habit. And once those habits are embedded, they can over time become deeper and deeper, until it doesn't almost matter what else you do, the habit will remain. Thankfully, we're not tigers, and therefore we are offered this really special and unique set of practices that I think we can pretty much say universally fall under the general category of mindfulness. And so mindfulness comes to us in the yoga tradition way, way back, to texts that at least touch on, say, 600 to 800 BC. So these are, and according to those texts, these were ancient practices then. So they've been done for a long time. In a more modern context, Buddhism sort of has carried the torch for the specific mindfulness practices that we'll be discussing today. And there are a lot of what am I trying to say? Modern day Buddhist practitioners who are fairly famous, who teach meditation practices in this particular part of the tradition. So we'll talk a little bit about what it is and what it does, and then we'll do some practice. This is one of my teachers. His name is Gary Kraftsow, And he says, the momentum of your life and the choices that you make today were set into motion eons ago. Samskaras have tremendous depth and energy behind them. Samskaras are patterns. They're patterns of behavior. And in the yoga world, we typically classify those patterns into three categories: thought, emotion, and action. So how we feel, what we think, and what we do. So the suggestion from the yoga world that is pretty much confirmed by modern psychology is that we get stuck in these patterns, and it can be very, very difficult to get out. And so from a yoga perspective, what we're trying to do is change the energy. And the energy that we're trying to change is on a very subtle level. It's called prana in yoga terms. And the suggestion that yoga brings us is that by doing practices, we can affect and shift prana in such a way as to promote transformation. And so that's what we're here and all about today. One quick definition of mindfulness, there are many. Mindfulness is the awareness of that, the awareness that arises out of intentionally paying attention in an open, kind, and discerning way. We're not trying here to be some kind of mindfulness superheroes. We're not trying to achieve something in particular. The only thing we're really trying to do is to engage in the moment, engage in a practice, and let what happens happen. So it's not a matter of, having some goal in mind. It's not a matter of doing it right or wrong. It's a matter of just making the effort. And if the effort is sincere and it's regular and it has some energy behind it, it produces results. And that's been proven. We'll talk about modern science in a minute. So the result comes from the effort, and just noticing, the process of noticing is the gift that pays dividends. And it pays dividends really throughout your life. It isn't just in the moment. It isn't just for the day. A regular practice will indeed change your life, and I can attest to that. So a few of the things that we've talked about for those of you who haven't been able to join us to date is some findings that have been supported by modern science. We are hardwired for vigilance. We are creatures fundamentally of keeping ourselves safe, searching our surroundings for danger, and anticipating what could happen that might be bad, that might threaten our health or our existence. Many of our conditioned responses in life are born out of this vigilance. So the way that we act in large measure now and every day of our lives is based in this sort of primal urge for survival. And that by extension suggests that fear is is the emotion which seems to underlie just about every difficult emotion that we can come up with. So whether it's aggression or anxiety or depression, these things seem to be partially or largely rooted in the one response of fear. And what yoga says is that we possess an innate ability to cultivate the habit of mindfulness, to weaken our fear response, and ultimately to live a fuller and happier existence. And that doesn't sound too bad, does it? And then yoga has a formula, and it's kind of a three-pronged formula. And it says you have to practice, you have to be mindful or self-reflective when you practice, and you have to cultivate an acceptance. Acceptance is just acceptance that the world is what the world is. And all the worrying, all the anger, all the aggression, all of the consternation that we may have isn't going to affect what happens. It's still going to happen. And we may have some local impact in our circle of influence based on the way that we behave. But according to yoga, the best thing that we can do is to change our own patterns so that we can be healthier, more functional, and therefore imbibe that kind of attitude, that kind of energy onto those who are within our sphere of existence. So what yoga says is we have a true nature which is covered by our experiences and our conditioning. It's covered by our experiences and conditioning. And I think this is a really interesting finding. And when this sunk in with me, it made a big difference for me to appreciate that there's the possibility that what's really going on with us is that we are actually okay. And it's just the stuff that gets in the way, the thoughts, the feelings, the actions. It's the stuff that gets in the way that keeps us from always feeling okay or being okay. And so if we can start to remove that covering, then we unveil beneath what I think this is a Buddhist expression. They would say, we unveil the gems. We unveil the gems. So our true existence, our true nature. So yoga says that the true nature, our true nature, is connected to everyone and everything. So it isn't just our nature; it's the goodness of all that's around us, and that there is this connection that, again, is called prana, this fundamental energy that supports all things. And once we've uncovered our own, we have a clearer ability to see the goodness that surrounds us. As we foster the skill to see our own conditioning for what it is, then our connection to our true self begins to emerge. So here's how we practice. We use 3 anchors, is what they're called. So anchors are our reminders. When we sit for a meditation practice, for a mindfulness practice, we start by focusing on something. And that something is going to leave our mind inevitably. And it's going to leave our mind many times over. This is the nature of the mind. It can't be avoided, or only avoided by those who have done serious meditation practices over a number of years. So for the rest of us, we're stuck with the fact, the fundamental understanding that the mind is going to want to do what it always does, which is to switch from thing to thing to thing. And I've quoted this before, but there are various numbers, but 70 to 90,000 thoughts per day has the typical mind. And then the follow-up joke is, and 99% of those are the same. So the idea here is that we recognize from the outset that when we sit down for a practice, there is going to be chatter. And sometimes the chatter is incessant and we can't really do anything to interrupt that chatter. It just happens and happens and happens and happens. And sometimes things may be a little bit calmer and we may see little glimmers of space between the chatter. And over time, those little moments of space become more frequent and they become longer. And that's what the practice does. So these anchors are what we focus on to begin practice and then to return to as we notice the mind is wandering away. The 3 primary anchors that we use are sound, breath, and sensation. And we're going to get an experience of all of those today. We're good on time. I want to start practicing now. So I would ask that you find yourself a comfortable seated position. If you really like to lie down, don't today. Save that for another day. We'll actually, I think next week perhaps we'll do something that if you come to regular yoga classes, you will have done something similar. It's a body scan kind of a practice, and that you can do lying down. In fact, it's almost preferred. But for today, there's a you may have noticed this in your life. There's an alertness that fades once you start lying down. It's not the same. So seated, please, in a comfortable position for you, but with a long spine, so a lifted spine, away from the back of the chair, if that's okay for your body. If you are seated on a chair or a couch or something, then feet flat on the floor would be good. And if you're seated on a cushion or on the floor, just allow your legs to relax as much as possible. And if you notice, if you're lying on the floor, if you're seated on the floor and you notice that your legs have some tension in them, particularly the tops of the thighs will get the tension, then a little elevation would be in order for your hips, because it suggests that you're using too much muscular energy to hold yourself up. And that's going to be a problem as we practice. When I first started in Buddhism meditation practices 19 or so years ago, I didn't know any better. And so I was just in pain for the half an hour that we were meditating. And then someone said, well, you can sit up on something and not be in pain. And that was better. All right, so settle in. Allow your hands to rest comfortably. Let's do this with your palms facing up. So they might be in your lap or seated on the tops of your thighs or the tops of your knees. And close your eyes. See if you can find some weight in your eyelids. And from your eyelids out in all directions, up, down, into the sides, can you feel some softness beginning to come into those muscles surrounding the eye sockets? And then can you notice your shoulders and your neck? And as you do, can you just see whether you detect any tension in the shoulders or in the neck? And if you do, maybe use a couple of out breaths to allow it to soften. Now, there's one guideline, well, two guidelines, I guess, for this particular practice. We did this on Tuesday for those of you who were with us on Tuesday. And if you were, it's not really a repeat, or it shouldn't be, because this is one of the most important practices that we can do in mindfulness. So it's worth repeating. This has to do with touching in with fear, with everyday fear. So this is best explored when you're not sort of in the throes of fear. So if you happen to have come to this session today, just really, really upset, then I invite you just to sort of breathe through this, follow the anchors, and pay less attention to the specific instruction. And then the second thing to keep in mind here is that if you have fear that's related to trauma, facing it alone in a practice like this should only be undertaken after you've received some one-on-one support from a qualified healthcare provider, or at least from a qualified meditation teacher. So trauma is not something to just sort of dive into in this kind of a setting. So with that said, have some receptive awareness and begin to notice the sounds in the space around you. And you might notice the constancy of some sounds. And you might notice the starting and stopping of some sounds. And so when we say to listen with receptive awareness, what we're suggesting is to set aside the judgment, set aside the analysis. You don't need to know what the sound is or where it's coming from or how loud or soft it is. This is an exercise in observation. So this is our first anchor, is sound. Relax back into your awareness of being seated. And now let your attention rest softly on your out breath, letting each release from your body reach out into space and dissolve. See if you can feel that your entire body and mind could just follow the breath out and dissolve. And if you're able to allow your mind to follow the breath out and dissolve, let your awareness rest out there in openness. So the exhale is just releasing into space. And then bring your awareness back to rest in the sensation of sitting. And we introduce the third anchor of sensation. And the reason I asked you to have your palms face up is so that the palms of the hands, which have a tremendous amount of nerve endings in them, can experience a little softness. So you feel some softness in your hands and your fingers. Can you feel the space between each finger and between the forefinger and the thumb? And if the inside edges of your fingers happen to be touching a little bit or a lot, can you feel that? Can you feel air pressure, air movement in your palms? This is the third anchor of sensation. So in this particular guided meditation, we're going to be sort of seeking inside. So we'll start with an anchor, and the anchor in this case will be used to come back to either when your mind starts to get lost away from the moment, or if whatever we're working with begins to, just become too much, if that's the case. So invite into your awareness a situation. It doesn't matter what one, you don't get graded on this. Any situation that occurs to you that may evoke fear. And we're not talking about, traumatic fear, but everyday fear. So identify something for yourself that evokes a sense of fear, that raises discomfort. It might involve something with a current situation we're facing with the virus and or with other people, work, family. It could be something about your own behavior or your health. And just sit with that. And then ask yourself now, what is the worst part of this situation? What are you really afraid of? What's the worst case scenario? And allow this story to unfold. Let it become vivid as you can make it. As the story unfolds in your mind, can you find sensation in your body that arises as a result of playing this out? Just notice your physical response to your own story. Observe your body's reaction. So the gateway to healing can be found in the sensations that are tied to a story that invokes fear. The feelings in your body can help to unwind the story and unwind the fear. So be in contact. Discover how the fear expresses itself to you on a physical level. Might be in your eyes, your throat, jaw, chest, forehead, belly, hands, legs, feet. And then silently issue a kind invitation to the fear and just say, be here. Be here with me. And then let your breath touch this place of vulnerability. So as you breathe in, surround the sensation with your breath. Take the energy of the breath to that physical location. And then as you breathe out, feel the openness of the sky, the openness of space. So you breathe in and draw the energy of the fear to that place where it manifests in your body. You breathe out and make contact with the greater space, the space of the universe. Each breath, feel willingness to gently connect with the waves of sensation that are unpleasant and disturbing. And then breathe out and connect to the expanse of the universe. Breathe in and touch the sensations of fear with gentleness, with care. Breathe out and offer to a larger space that has room for all the fear. And again, if the fear becomes overwhelming, if it becomes too intense, just focus on the in and out breath. Or focus on sounds. Or focus on sensation. Breathe in, contact the sensations. Touch the fear. Breathe out. Sense the room, the space that can hold the fear. And then allow your effort to relax. Touch in again with the sensation of your body sitting. Notice the sounds. Notice the breath. And relax. All right. That is mindfulness meditation. So as I said at the beginning, this is, this is fairly, this is really important stuff. It's really good stuff. It's very serious stuff too. So it isn't necessarily something that you want to do every day. Last session, the challenge that was offered was to go outside, sit somewhere, and just spend 20 minutes without a phone and without interaction with anything except whatever comes up with whatever's going on around you. I think earlier, probably last week, the suggestion was that a mindfulness practice could be done with what would be a mundane, regular daily activity, such as brushing your teeth. That's a big favorite. Washing the dishes, if that's part of your life. Something that you would tend to do while so-called multitasking, or that you might do with relative mindlessness, and to make it mindful. So again, I would encourage you, in the interest of sort of multifaceting this practice, to do something, take something that's mundane and attach some mindfulness to it. So do it on your own, get away from the kids, get away from the wife or the husband or the whatever, the dog, and do a mindful brushing of the teeth. So you're really aware and focused on what's going on. Seated mindfulness practice. The beginning suggestion, if this is relatively new to you, is 5 to 10 minutes a day. If you can do 10 minutes of mindfulness practice virtually every day, it doesn't have to be, it's not like you break the rules and you lose all your benefits. So you don't have to do it every day, but every day is certainly encouraged. And a practice where you can sit away from distractions, especially including the phone, set a timer of some sort, put it behind you so you're not looking at it, and use one of the anchors that we've suggested, and just, sort of see what happens. This is how we train the mind. I will offer a couple of things here. There is a book that I actually, to full disclosure, I haven't read this, but it was recommended by one of my mindfulness teachers who I have a lot of respect for, and I'm sure it's a good book. It's called Mindfulness, Finding Peace in a Frantic World. Wonder if that'll ever come in handy. Then there is a mobile app. I'm offering a different one each time we meet. This one is called Portal. It is a mindfulness app. It's a little different because, as far as I know, it's all sounds. So it's like sounds from around the world. So you would use this in the context of a meditation practice, of a mindfulness practice, and you would hit play and experience the waves or the rainstorm or whatever is on it. I've not used it. It's one of 10 or 12 apps that have been recommended to me, though. So, and then, of course, you can find me on YouTube if that's your thing. And this session will go up at some point, probably not today, but at some point in the near future. I'm trying to get all of them. I haven't been completely successful in that, but I'm trying to get them all up on YouTube. So you will get a link following today's session from Yoga One, which you can use to get to the practice. It's on Zoom, or you can use my YouTube channel. And if you go to my YouTube channel, please look around a little bit. There are some other breathing practices on there, which are pretty cool. And like and subscribe, because in the YouTube world, those things are important. And I'm just starting to do something with a channel that I've had for a year and just kind of played with individual clients. So I'm trying to make it something more, as long as I got a few hours on my hand a day. And then we will be here next Tuesday, same time, same channel. So please stop back and encourage your friends, neighbors, and countrymen to do the same. We love to spread the word with this stuff because it's good, because it works, and because from a standpoint of a mindfulness, from the standpoint of mindfulness teaching, this is an ideal situation because almost everybody's afraid and almost everybody has time on their hands. I hope you got value out of today's session. Please explore Steve White Yoga for additional practices and techniques to deal with changing conditions and changing times. Until next time, thanks for watching.